Hello, everyone. You are now back with us at the Speakers Bureau and St. Lucie County Public Schools, and we have a wonderful speaker that is going to share his life story with you. For those of you who do not know about the Speakers Bureau, we come to encourage, inspire, and motivate our students, but not only our students, but the community at large. We want you to know that no matter what you are experiencing or what you may be going through in life now, you can succeed, you can be successful, you can overcome. So today we have this wonderful man that I met just maybe a month ago. Yes, about a month ago. And this is how I met him. You know, I personally have an after-school program since 1986 in the Lincoln Park community area. And we were very concerned about not having the vaccines, the COVID vaccines in the Lincoln Park community. And so through letter writing and through having meetings, my husband, Reverend Kenneth Mills, met Dr. Ramgopal, and he, with the generosity of his heart, came and did vaccines for us in the Lincoln Park area. And that is how I personally met him, and his story is just so wonderful. So right now we want to introduce to you Dr. Ramgopal Moti.
Moti,
yes. And he has a clinic, a center,
yes.
Right, a medical center. It's on Midway Road, and it's called Midway Specialty Care Center. And so Dr. Ramgopal, can you just give us an overview of how did you end up here in St. Lucie County being the doctor for Midway Specialty Care Center?
Well, so that's a really interesting question, and it always takes me back to 1999 when I had finished my fellowship at the University of Miami in infectious disease, and that's after a 2-year program. And I spent a year in Tampa working as a hospitalist, and I wasn't rewarded. I didn't feel emotionally satisfied. So then I went back to Guyana, and where I was born. I was born in British Guyana, then became Guyana. And living there for the first 18, 19 years of my life, I always felt a sense of commitment to give back to my country. And now, so I went back to Guyana for several months, worked at the university, and then I recognized that what I've learned over the last 15 years of my life was going to be probably not fulfilled or not be used. So I came back to Florida. At the time it was Tampa. And in Tampa, I looked at, I made some calls. I was looking at some research opportunities. I had several opportunities. The opportunities I always reflect on was I had an academic position offered to me. I had a position to work with the U.S. military Army to do medical services in San Antonio, Texas, at a research facility. And then I looked at the map of Florida and I said, you know, I do like Miami, I do like Orlando, and I circled this area. I have never been to this area in my life. I had no idea or concept of what St. Lucie County was about, or Fort Pierce. And I said, I'm going to go there. I think I look back at that time and said, that was spiritual guidance, because I'm a true believer. I pray regularly for guidance, and I was truly believed it's a spiritual guidance that brought me here. And I said, well, I'll be there for a few years, and I'll go back to academia or even consider going to the U.S. Military to do work. So, because it's always an exciting, infectious disease is such an exciting field. There's so much things happening always. Is it emerging diseases in Africa or South America or in the United States or wherever? Or is there drug resistance, meaning that here's a bacteria and now it's becoming resistant to antibiotics? And what about patient changes? And then here was the HIV epidemic 15 years in.
Oh, yes.
And then I rewind back to like when the first time I saw my first patient with HIV I saw was when I was a medical student in Jamaica. I was actually the first patient in Jamaica at the time who was diagnosed with HIV. And here I was a young medical student in a land where we didn't even know what HIV was. So when we look at COVID today and we wear our gown and mask, we are doing even more with HIV in that era. So then I went through fellowship and I said HIV patients were dying, they were struggling, it was tough. Emotionally, I was getting burnt out. And I said, I really wanted to start my own private practice. And here, that's why I came to St. Lucie County. Wow. Quite fortuitous.
Yes, well, we're fortunate to have you for sure come here. And I'm also a very spiritual person. So I also believe that my steps are ordered by the Lord. So you really hit a real sensitive spot when you said that.
I completely agree. I look back at my life and I see options where after I finished high school in Guyana, I had two options: either go to Russia to do medicine or go to University of West Indies. I didn't really want to go to Russia to do medicine, so I was praying. I said, I hope I go to Jamaica. And boom, the scholarship came true for me to go to Jamaica. So I look back at my life, and every time that the road diverged, there's always the role in my mind of a spiritual leader guiding me in this direction.
Well, we also, when I say we, my husband and I and our organization, we also believe that you were sent by the divine to come and do what you did. And about a month ago, you came and gave 150 vaccines in the Lincoln Park area, right on Avenue D. And we cannot thank you enough.
Well, thank you so much for that, but also the whole organization around me. I have an incredible support with the people around me who've been there. My CEO, Anand Sukram, and Jana Eschbach, and the whole team has been there every day.
And they were there. They were there both of those days, and they worked. They did a miraculous job, and everything went so smoothly. I felt like I was in a clinic or in a medical office. So yes, you have a wonderful team, and we thank all of you for what you've done. And now you're going to come back and give the second shot. That's coming next week, I think, or the week before. The weekend. So now, but we want to talk about your life.
Great.
We want to know, how was it like growing up?
So growing up in Guyana in the 70s and the early 80s was very tough. There was an economic crisis. There was no electricity. Many, many days I would go home and had a candle to read, to study. When I was like 17 or 18, I felt so defeated. I said, why am I even bother studying? I mean, this is a point in my life. I don't think I'll even get to a secondary education. I'm secondary. I'm not going to get to a tertiary education here. I mean, I'm finishing my high school. I'm doing well in high school. I'm, really, really good grades and everything. But I felt sort of lost. And here are my brothers my parents had sacrificed to send them abroad to school. My brothers were lawyers, and my other brothers in the financial area. So I'm saying, I'm the last of five, and what's going to happen to me? And I remember one day I was riding my bicycle. We ride bicycles in Guyana wherever we go. And one day I was riding, and we were riding along, and I felt so lost, And then lo and behold, I did fairly well in my exams, and I got a scholarship, and it was just a relief. But studying and education is such an important thing my father inculcated in us. He grew up in a farmer's village, very, very modest surroundings, and he had 5 children, and my mother was like behind us, very supportive every day. She would say, how was school today? And make sure we got our food every day, make sure she's always there for us. My father was always pushing us and pushing us. He had 5 kids, and he wants all of them to go either be an attorney, a lawyer, an accountant, medicine. So I was the last of 5. So I said, well, I'll do medicine. Not because at that time, here it was, I didn't even know what medicine was, growing up in a country like Guyana.
Everybody else had already done the other
Right. So I was left, I'll take up the challenge.
Oh, my God. Good for you. So, wow. What I hear is that your journey was not easy. And thank goodness for scholarships. And that is how you were able to continue your education?
Yes, that's correct. So I got a scholarship from the government in Guyana. At the time, the president himself signed off on the scholarship. And that was such an amazing story. Because here I was also a chess player. I was a national champion for chess at the time in my age group. Yeah. And then I said, and then I got a scholarship. And I think, but I do believe that working hard, getting to that point, and hoping and praying that you'll get to the next point is such an important part of our lives. And you look back at that dark period of 1981, 82, and 83, when I finally got my scholarship. It was an amazing feeling. The day when they said, you're going to go to Jamaica for medical school, I said, wow. Because Jamaica, University of West Indies, is acclaimed as one of the leading schools for medicine. It was an old British medical school that brings all the people in the Caribbean together. And it's a well-recognized medical school. So here I was coming from a modest middle class, going out to Jamaica. And Jamaica is a huge culture shift for me.
Yes.
Here's Guyana, Indo-African community. And, when we look back at our childhood, it wasn't about, excessiveness. It's about being minimalist. And over life, you look back at those minimalist years and you still continue that throughout. Whatever you gathered culturally, emotionally, mentally in that period between 12 and 18 is such an important period, because you grow and you reflect back and you understand that period. So when I went to Jamaica, it was 5 years medical school. I was there. By 23, I was finished as a medical doctor at 23. And I said, then I had to do internship for 2 years in the Bahamas. And then after that, I went to my residency in Detroit. So if you look at my story, here's Georgetown, Guyana, here's Kingston, Jamaica. And in Kingston, we know there's poverty. We see it. We see people in the streets begging. We see it just like in Guyana. And then from there to Nassau, Bahamas, is a wealthier country. Then Detroit, Michigan. And then Miami. So I've spent most of my life in tough communities, tough work. Seeing HIV in the Bahamas was very, very tough. Going into those wards and seeing people just waiting to die, seeing that in Guyana. So my brother and I was having this conversation about death recently, and we said, I've seen so much death in my life, you don't even want to know. And it really hits us, here's a body, and then the going, it's just a process. But when you start, you don't think about where you're at today.
Right.
So rewinding back to that teenage years. But I think the important point is having good parents, having parents who can be there for you. Every day you have a tough day.
And they don't have to have, when you say good parents, and what many people don't understand, you are not talking about parents who have to be educated or have to have good professions or making a certain amount of money. You are talking about your parents were very poor, and they, back then, and I'm not sure if it's even there now in Jamaica or Guyana, but there was no food stamps. There was no help, government assistance.
No.
That you can just you can't even imagine the poverty that goes on in certain parts of the world. Tell me something. What was your best childhood memory during that time?
Playing cricket. I love to play cricket. And I'm playing chess. Those are the good memories I have. Playing chess for the country, going from one country to another, playing chess. And then the team sport. I always believe that as a child growing up, you need to have at least 2 or 3 sports. And this is what my brothers taught me. They said, you need, my brothers are older than me. I have 3 of them. They said, you need to learn chess at least. That's a mental game. You learn it from very early. So from 8, 9 years, I learned it. And then cricket, you need a physical sport. Cricket, soccer, whichever one you choose. But cricket was the one I really enjoyed. It's a team sport. You need to, understand people and enjoy people around you. What
sport do we have here today that compares with cricket?
Nothing. I always say, people say baseball is like cricket. No, baseball is not like cricket. Cricket is, it's such a unique sport. And I know we have a cricket club here in St. Lucie County. And we actually did vaccines at that cricket club recently, which was good. So over the years, I've always understood that, the tough communities, the poverty, I've always been involved in that world. And I think that's one of the reasons when I came to St. Lucie County, I never left. Because at that time, St. Lucie County, especially Fort Pierce, we had among the highest incidence of HIV in the state of Florida per county.
Yes, and that was all over, and we all was affected by it. We all, our families, as you talk about it, I had family members that actually passed during that time because of HIV. And and now we're dealing with the same thing with COVID.
We're dealing with the same with COVID. Yeah. But we really tackle HIV in this community very, very well. When we look back at the last 15 years, now we're like number 18th county, and our numbers are really low. We've moved from 500 new cases a year to less than 50. And that's an amazing story. So there's a lot of good stories here over the years. And
the vaccines have been a God gift to communities and to society now. And so we are so glad that you are doing what you are doing because you're saving a lot of people through your work. Now, I want to ask you about your teachers, your educators. What teacher in school made the most impact on you and why?
Great question. So when I was in primary school, I always remember one particular teacher.
We always have that one or two that we remember. Sometimes it's only one.
And he's like, and actually he was the teacher for all my brothers and sisters in my family.
Okay.
And we always remember him, and we always talk about him even up to now, 40 years later, 45
Was
years
he
later.
just a teacher in one grade or?
One grade.
Okay.
He would teach mathematics, he would teach English, he would teach everything.
Oh, so he was teacher for all?
Yes.
All, okay.
So in our system, it's every grade you go in, you have one teacher. So he teaches everything. And he was such amazing. He taught us math, he taught us English, he taught us everything together. And the whole family still remembers him very, very fondly. And then when I went into high school, now there was 2 or 3 teachers. As you go through the years, there's some of these teachers. And it's such an important thing to have a good teacher mentor. I mean, the teachers are, in my, looking back historically, they're such an important part of our career and our lives.
Oh, yeah. If it wasn't for teachers, you wouldn't be where you are today, or I wouldn't be where I am.
Nope.
Because they taught us, and we had to learn. We had to do the part of making sure we learned what was taught. But without being taught, how can you learn?
Correct. And in our days, we were caned if we didn't do right, so we were still in that British system. And if you look at probably the English school system, you go through, you do O levels and A levels, but throughout the process, there's also a discipline system. You got to wear a certain uniform. Every day you wear your tie, you wear your, and then as you move on in the career, the teachers change, But there's a heavy, rigorous system, which was, I think, was very important.
Yes.
And every day we'd go to school, we have a prayer. We'd pray, we do an assembly every morning, and we do prayers. And it was important to inculcate that form into our lives.
That helped to make you who you are today, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you have a hero, Doctor?
A hero?
Yes. My hero is Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman.
And she's my hero because when she did escape oppression and slavery in the South, she could have stayed up north and been relatively safe, but she didn't. She looked back and she saw that more people needed her. So she went back over and over again and was able to free her people. Yeah. And in the end, she was able to go back and even deliver her mother and father. Oh. Never got caught, never lost a passenger. So she's my hero, actually. Of all the people I can think of, Harriet Tubman, I really respect her and understand the plight and what she went through. It can resonate. How about yourself?
So I've always thought of that question, who are my heroes? And I've broken it down into 2 areas. Scientific heroes, people who I said are amazing people and have changed the face of the world.
Yes.
And then there's the heroes who have changed society, of which Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King are those 2. And then of those in the scientific world, I always reflect on Leonardo da Vinci, of his amazing inventions at the time. And of our current group of people, when I look around the world today, of course, there's Bill Gates out there. Then there's also Dr. Collins, the head of the NIH, who deciphered the genetic sequencing and the code. And now he just leads us right now this COVID story. So when we think about those are really, truly some of my heroes. I mean, there's the scientific heroes, and there's the religious heroes. I have a lot of people I look up to. And I love reading autobiographies. I love reading biographies as a young kid.
Tell us your favorite book.
My favorite books. Okay, so I grew up in the British system. It was Charles Dickens. My brother used to encourage, you got to read Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, and this kind of stories, Robinson Crusoe. And then as you get older, you start reading about scientific discoveries, stories of the mind, like Nobel Prize winners, and like A Beautiful Mind. That was a really, really impressive story. And again, going back to the old historical books about the Caribbean, sometimes the history of the Caribbean. So I read almost any and everything. Now I tend to read a lot of investigative journalism more than in the past.
Yes.
But I still enjoy reading biographies, autobiographies of historical nature.
Yes, A Beautiful Mind. Tell me about that book a little bit.
So as we know, that's of a mathematician who's schizophrenic, and now he became the Nobel Prize winner because of his understanding of a game theory. And the game theory is an interesting concept whereby you understand people's behavior in a mathematical way. And he also was part in the war. He also deciphered codes as well. So that's also, that book it's a movie as well out there. That's a really, really good movie about that. So I would go back and read that from time to time. But I also like to read books about the mind, duality of the mind, a lot of Hermann Hesse.
Yes.
Siddhartha was he won the prize for that as well. So when I look at my library and I go through the books I read almost any and everything I can.
Yes. And my bachelor's degree is in psychology.
Psychology.
So I am very much into the study of human behavior, and the mind, you know. You spoke about the book A Beautiful Mind being about a mathematician. And what we find at Save Our Children, our after-school program, is that it's not easy to get people who have a mind for mathematics to help our children. Our children, we currently have a tutorial program. It's a virtual one because of COVID right now, and it's a one-on-one. So we pair people up with the child to help them, and that child is either failing in math or reading. They either have a D or F. And we take these children and we match them up with people. And I have a mathematician currently that I have given her 4 kids because we have quite a few people, you know, reading is very important. Yeah. And we have kids that need that. But it's harder to find mathematicians to help. And so I respect that, and I know that's what it took, I'm sure, to help you in your field.
So I'll give an interesting story about that. So I remember when I was in like third, we call it form 1 to 6. I was in third form, and I was struggling at mathematics, really struggling. Okay. Maybe moved on to, you know, the early math, I was good. Mm-hmm. Then we started going into calculus and complicated calculus and physics, and I was struggling. And then I started sitting with some, you know what I've learned a lot in my career is you need to find the right friends. Friends who are smarter than you, or you may be smarter, or friends who can guide you and help you. Like, I look back at that period of my life, and there were 2 or 3 friends of mine who, you know, and you started showing me things that my brain wasn't developed to understand, but their brain was developed. Not only did it happen then, it also happened in medical school. Whenever I was struggling in academics, I always go back and look around me and look at the people around me. Even though I'm competitive, I said, I really want to, you teach me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we learn from our friends as much as we can learn from teachers as well sometimes, because they may be smarter than you. Mm-hmm. And I do remember, and after that, I started really working hard. I was not a really good mathematician until I started really, really working hard at it. And then by A levels, I did really well in maths and physics. Okay. Those became my strength. But prior to that, I struggled. Mm-hmm. But the only way you overcome struggle is by doing it over and over and over, repetitive until you understand it. And once you understand it, you can go to the next level. Mm-hmm. And the same thing happened in medical school as well. The first year I was struggling with anatomy and physiology. And a really good friend of mine from St. Kitts said, let's sit down and start a study group. Mm-hmm. And I've always valued those study groups throughout my life, you know. And sometimes when I even, like now, we have groups that will, so I'm on several boards around the country. I sit with a group of the infectious disease doctors, we get together, and those are the most amazing time you have because you're really putting your brains together with people who are smarter than you.
Wow, you have given us so many points of success just listening to what you're saying, and I want you young people and community to take it in, because that is what we want to bring out, to give you what are the methods that these individual people use to be successful in spite of. And I've heard the doctor mention being successful by having parent support.
Yes.
For those of you who have parent support, make sure you use that to your advantage, because many times as young people, we take it for granted when we have these things. Yeah. And so if you have, I always tell young people, if you have a grandmother who is extremely supportive, and she may be raising you all by herself, or a single parent, but they are extremely supportive, they want the best for you in life, take advantage of that, because everyone needs someone that is completely for them, and they understand that. But even if you do not have that at all in your life, the people that you're around, you mentioned that, your peers, as well as the folks that you surround yourself with.
Siblings.
Your siblings, well, you can't sometimes choose your siblings.
I know, but I have great siblings.
You had great ones.
I had amazing siblings. I mean, there's no way, I would never trade my siblings in this whole world.
Right, so if you have those siblings, follow them. You know, follow their path, because you talked about you had 4.
Yeah. And they motivated me and
they motivated you to go, because they were successful and they were pushing themselves. So of course we want to make sure that we look to our siblings who are role models. Not the ones that's not, though. We have to bring that out.
I was lucky. I
because,
got good ones.
well, like you said, it's about bringing those that you have around you, surrounding yourself. And there are people in school for kids, young people who may not have the sibling support or the parental support. Find yourself some good groups within your school district, good clubs. Get into sports. You mentioned sports. Keep your mind occupied. As not
Sports
just,
is so important.
Yes.
So important.
Yes.
Up to now, I follow sports all the time. I mean, it's just a rewarding story. And I haven't told you this, but this is kind of like interesting, but also I struggled with ADD. And it's a tough struggle. And I didn't realize it for many, many years, even through high school, med school, even years later, I didn't recognize this concept of ADD, focusing on long periods of time. And so I had to learn to meditate, sit still for long periods of time to understand. And I think a lot of kids and a lot of us have some form of attention challenges, whereby we can only focus for 5 minutes or 10 minutes on a process and then move on to something else.
Yes. I know a kid like that. That say about children. He's such a sweetheart, but he's all over the place with his mind.
That's me. And I look at some people who can sit for hours. Oh my gosh, I wish I was like you. And then they say, well, I wish I were like me.
And yet, look at what you've accomplished. So another point that you brought out was hard work and doing something over and over again. And when you say that, I come to mind a couple of people who I knew in the past that went to college, who you never would think would even be able to graduate. And they failed over and over again, but they didn't quit. Yeah. And because they didn't quit, they now have their degrees. So it's amazing what we can do.
Not quitting.
Yeah. Just not quitting.
Not quitting. So important.
Yeah.
Many times I was here, I see so many patients struggling. I said, no, don't quit. Never quit. My belief right now is do as best as you can, not to quit. Quitting is not a word should be in my vocabulary right now.
No, and anyone's vocabulary. That's why you're where you're at. I mean, you talked about the challenge of having learning, what we call learning disabilities, as well as not being good in math, and these different challenges, the poverty and just the different things that you've gone through. And yet you've been able to surpass that in your career life. Now, are you a married man?
I was married and divorced.
Okay. Do you have children?
No.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Wow.
But I always said that my explanation for that is, I guess God, that wasn't in my direction. I think this is what God wants me to do right now, to give 100% to my work all day long.
Yeah.
And I value. Sometimes I wish, that story would have been different, but here I am with this story, and I take this story and don't regret the other story, but push on with this story. Because I truly believe this is this path that God has put me on, and I need to pursue it and keep going with it.
Dr. Ramgopal, thank you. We are running out of time now with the Speakers Bureau, but we could have gone on and on with our conversation. You have so much richness that you can share and that you have shared. And hopefully we can have you back sometime, maybe next year, and maybe even have you come into a school and speak to students in an auditorium style after COVID. But you have encouraged many people today, and we are very grateful to hear your story. You have motivated me, and so I know you've motivated others as well. I have a very challenging story myself growing up, and yet because I pressed through, motivation is the key.
Yes.
You can be as smart as you want to be and can be, but if you don't have the motivation, you can find yourself on the side without. So, and that's what I hear from you, Doctor. You've had motivation. Again, thank you, and I want you to know, audience, that his specialty, his medical business is the Midway Specialty Care Center right here in Fort Pierce.
Infectious disease. Well, thank you for the opportunity. And just as a wrap-up, motivation is so key. And when your motivation is down, if you have the right people around you, they can
lift it up.
You.